which isn't really that much to really when you think about it.
No, I suppose not. But per person, that's fairly generous for a lot of people, isn't it? I mean, that's $50 that they would otherwise can have a
spend on a couple of.
Gareth Morgan in the NBR still thinks the tender price could go as high as $3 million. Unless the vendor takes pity on the public and does a deal, they're likely to come away empty-handed. But they haven't yet shown the collective nous to remove that risk. I mean, what do you think? Do you think this is going to be accepted in New Bones?
Gareth was rejected, wasn't he? He offered to buy it, didn't he? But they rejected his offer.
He wanted to contribute to it, and basically I think the response was, we'll go it alone.
Yeah, I think he's a bit angry about that, judging by what he just said.
You get what he's saying here, though, don't you? You know, that in a tender process you have one shot, and if your price isn't high enough and the actual other side just pushes slightly above you in a blind tender process, then the other side gets it. And that's what I think Gareth Morgan is saying. You know, if you had have taken my offer, you got a bit of it in that kind of process there, perhaps.
We've said before, though, no internet, no power, your life's governed by the tides. I mean, how many Russian billionaires are queuing up to...
Sounds pretty good to me.
No, they'll just plant a satellite over the top of it. Come on.
Jim, you've been holidaying. You look pretty happy with the situation.
No, pretty happy being we were pretty happy being at Awaroa Beach.
Yeah.
Because it's a fantastic beach, fantastic. Do you have a feeling it'll end up back in belonging to all of us again?
Time will tell on that one, but I do know what is showing here is, once again, it shows the sensitivity to overseas interests buying our beautiful land.
Our beautiful land, thank you. A flag-raising fundraiser in Auckland to build business for a change of flag, and also the site of the new Kyle Lockwood design. His photo's been appearing in media, I've seen him before. His design fluttering beside our Union Jacked flag. Is it changing opinion? There's a new Curia poll showing the number of people adamant they want to keep the present flag. That's down to 48% in this poll, which 24% of people keen on a flag change, but another 12% will probably vote for change. About 9% are unsure. And if you give the new flag the benefit of the doubt and look at these figures again and, cross your eyes slightly, it could be a close-run thing, couldn't it?
I think it's the Union Jack factor. You know, when over the last month, we've seen news reports coming out how British immigration is clamping down on how long Kiwis can stay over there. The threshold being your income generated in 1 year being $76,000 or thereabouts. So that excludes nurses, it excludes teachers that have settled over there. So all of these types of things are showing that some of the legacy issues, or the legacy kind of it's empire, and
hasn't done so since 1974. You could argue there.
Exactly. Raising the fist to the ceiling. But I think that perhaps it is.
Key. I want the flag that we've always had, and none of us really believe that the empire is there anymore. It's part of our history. We should just leave it.
It's a long bow to try and get people to vote for a Union Jack flag.
So you reckon the new one's going to take it?
Oh, I think
and
we'll
Wendell
see
doesn't.
it. I think we'll see the trajectory increase.
I think the old one will stay, because no one wants to help John Key do anything at the moment.
Wendell Nissen, Selwyn Manning on the panel. Thank you both. And thanks, everybody. We're back tomorrow. Checkpoint with John Campbell follows.
Kia ora everyone, welcome to Checkpoint with John Campbell on RNZ National. We're on the radio, screening live on Freeview Channel 50. More of you receiving that now, and streaming live on the RNZ website. However you're doing so, thank you for joining us. Tonight, Christchurch, the day after. This time is the biggest damage, the stuff you can't see. The father who killed his son expressed no remorse and won't even say where the body is. Our reporter was at the Roy Guard sentencing. An open letter from a New Zealander held without charge in a maximum security prison in Perth to the politician responsible for him being there. This is the way the test ends, not with a bang but a whimper. We are at the Basin Reserve hunting for positives, and the President of Kiribati on his drowning country. All of that and more in the next 90 minutes. But first, here's Katrina Batten with RNZ News.
Kia ora, good evening. A High Court judge has described the killing of a man by his father who then hid the body as an evil act. David Roigard was today sentenced to life with a non-parole period of 19 years for the murder of his son Aaron in June 2014. The 27-year-old's body has never been recovered. Andrew McRae was in the High Court in New Plymouth.
Justice Heath said Roigard was cunning, callous, a compulsive liar and delusional. The court heard Roigard had an antisocial and narcissistic disorder. Justice Heath said Roigard didn't set out to kill his son, but it was Plan B after stealing $66,000 from him. Aaron Roigard's partner, Julie Thomas, told the court she would never forgive the 51-year-old and she had pure hatred for him. The police say they won't rest until they find Aaron's body so he can have a dignified farewell. In New Plymouth, Andrew McRae.
A Christchurch couple on one of the streets worst affected by silt from liquefaction say they were worried yesterday that they might be back to square one with sorting out their lives. Yesterday's 5.7 quake left most parts of the city unscathed but resulted in more silt and a sinkhole appearing on Bauer Avenue in Parklands. Alan Betteridge and Josie Hartley were in Littleton when the quake struck and quickly returned home to see if their house, which was only rebuilt 12 months ago, had survived the shaking. Apart from a giant sinkhole in the road outside their home and piles of silt, there was no damage and only the job of picking up a few items off the floor. The Corrections Department is standing by its investigation into claims of organised fighting at Auckland's Mount Eden prison. The prison's operator, Serco, wants the Chief Inspector's final report changed, saying it says it's unfair, inaccurate and relies on uncorroborated evidence from anonymous prisoners. Max Toll has been in the High Court in Wellington.
Control of the prison was taken off Serco in July after claims of violent attacks on prisoners and video footage of prison fight clubs were posted online. Serco says the Chief Inspector's subsequent investigation and final report relies on anonymous claims and allegations that haven't been verified. The report is suppressed. Corrections says it's the Chief Inspector's prerogative to include evidence and draw conclusions he feels are appropriate. Serco also says the investigation failed to confirm allegations that prisoners were thrown over balconies, an act known as dropping. This is Max Toll.
More than 39,000 pledges have been made towards a public campaign to buy a beachfront property in the Abel Tasman National Park and gift it back to New Zealand. The online campaign that began as a pipe dream on January the 22nd reached its $2 million benchmark on Friday, but the pledges have rolled in until today's 3 o'clock deadline. Organiser Dwayne Major told RNZ News just after it closed that the team behind the plan is hugely grateful for the support.
I just want to say thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, and especially to those families that actually dug deep to pledge towards this. We just want to say thank you so much. I think win or lose, it's been something special.
Dwayne Major says a lawyer and real estate professional are now helping with the tender documents, which will be lodged by tomorrow's 4 o'clock deadline. A former refugee from Eritrea says people are risking their lives to escape persecution and New Zealand should increase the number of refugees it accepts. Ibrahim Omer has spoken at Parliament in a public hearing about the 750 a year refugee quota. Community and church leaders, members of refugee communities and campaign groups were among the speakers at the hearing, which was sponsored by the United Future leader Peter Dunn. Ibrahim Omer says he risked being shot by border officers as he escaped to Sudan.
I had very limited options, either to be shot or get arrested and to be languished in underground or metal shipping containers somewhere in the desert, or to make it safe to Sudan. That was the third option.
Ibrahim Omer says he was then arrested as a spy in Sudan and faced being deported back to Eritrea before New Zealand took him in. The Wellington Rural Fire Authority will increase the fire risk from moderate to high this week. The fire risk rating covers Upper Hutt, Lower Hutt and from Otaki to Wellington. The Principal Rural Fire Officer, Rachel Thorpe, says the high level indicates that fires can ignite easily and it's more difficult for firefighters to bring them under control. 3 crews and a helicopter with a monsoon bucket are still working to extinguish 2 scrub fires that broke out behind Maidstone Park in Upper Hutt yesterday. The police are investigating. The Black Caps captain Brendan McCullum concedes his side was always on the back foot in their first Test loss to the Australian cricketers. New Zealand have been thrashed by Australia, losing by an innings and 52 runs at the Basin Reserve in Wellington. Brendan McCullum says Australia played excellently from the moment they won the toss.
It's one thing to win the toss on by seamer-friendly conditions, but it's another thing to execute as well as what they did. I thought they were outstanding, and from lunchtime on the first day we were trying to play catch-up and we were just never able to do it, and in the end we were completely outplayed.
Brendan McCullum. Olympic cycling medalists Hayden Ralston and Simon van Veldhoven have missed out on the team for next month's UCI Track World Champs. Ralston's gold and silver medals at the recent Track Cycling Nationals wasn't enough to make the five-man endurance squad, while Match Archibald got the nod ahead of van Veldhoven in the men's sprint team. The New Zealand rally driver Hayden Paddon is excited about the rest of the WRC season after his second place finish at Rally Sweden. That result equals his best ever finish, and it was the first time a non-European had been on a Rally Sweden podium. Paddon enjoyed his first outing in the new 2016 Hyundai.
Scoring manufacturers' points this weekend as well. It was a very important point, so all in all it's very good. We're really looking forward to the rest of the year now. We know there's a lot more to come from myself and from the car, especially once we spend a bit more time developing some setups and once we get back on the gravel. So good confidence booster, and now we're looking forward to Mexico.
Paddon is now fourth on the championship with the Mexico round early next month. That's the news.
A city reeling.
Maybe 30 seconds after the shaking stopped, big cloud of dust in front of us, couldn't see very much.
Nerves shaken.
For a lot of people, they will feel as though, gosh, I thought we were through all this. It undermines their confidence.
But a lucky escape.
I think we've got off pretty lightly this time, but I think that says a lot about how much stronger the infrastructure is and how better prepared we are.
News as it moves. Susie Ferguson and Guyan Espiner. Morning reports, weekdays from 6. Then after 9, news as it happens. In-depth conversations with world-leading experts and the latest trends you need to know about. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Met service weather to midnight tomorrow, Northland, Auckland, Waikato, Coromandel Bay of Plenty, Taupo and Gisborne. Often cloudy, a few showers, especially in eastern areas. For the remainder of the North Island, mostly fine and warm, but isolated afternoon and evening showers inland. For Nelson, Buller and Westland, cloudy periods, isolated showers today, mainly inland, occasional rain tomorrow, with heavy falls possible, especially about the ranges. Marlborough and Canterbury, mostly fine and warm, showers about the Marlborough Sounds and Richmond Range tomorrow. Otago, long fine spells with isolated afternoon and evening showers when thunderstorms are possible about Dunedin and Clutha. Southland, mainly fine tomorrow but isolated afternoon and evening showers. For Fiordland, rain heavy at times with possible thunderstorms, and the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. It's 9 minutes past 5 exactly.
Thanks, Katrina. We begin tonight in Christchurch, where no one was injured by yesterday's 5.7 earthquake and where physical damage was minor, but where nerves seem to have suffered more seriously. In the programme tonight, we'll hear from residents of Bower Ave and Parklands, where a giant sinkhole appeared this afternoon, and we'll get an update on the extensive demolition and recovery work taking place in the Port Hills, which is now on hold, of course. But first, Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalziel joins us live on the phone. Hi, Mayor Dalziel, you there?
Hello, John.
Hi, I was reading the press today, the editorial. I think they described it as a severe blow to morale. It's difficult to get a peg on this because the damage was minor. The physical structures seem to have withstood really well, which is great news. But people weren't prepared for it psychologically, were they?
No, and I think there were two reasons for that. One is that we haven't had an aftershock of this magnitude for 4 years. And it also came without warning. I mean, I've got used to that rumble,
yes.
That mentally steels you for the shaking. This went straight to the shaking. So it was a big fright, and I certainly got a fright. I've said I'm not proud, but I did scream. And but fortunately, I was at home and only my husband heard me. So it almost couldn't have happened. So, but I felt secure in my home. Everything was much more secure at home than it was in both the September and the February earthquakes. My bookshelves and everything tipped out last time. Didn't happen this time. And so I think that it was really those two things that we've lost the memory of what it was like.
Yeah.
See, we had over 50 aftershocks over magnitude 5 between September 2010 and December 2011. We actually got used to them, but we're not used to them. And I think it's been a bit of a reminder that we live in this environment, and it's not just Christchurch, it's really a reminder for the rest of the country that being prepared for whatever occurs and being aware of the natural hazards that we're exposed to because of the country that we live in is very important, and you just don't let that go, but you don't need to dwell on it either.
Okay, so let's take the positives from what you've just said. And the positives, the most immediate and obvious positive is that it seems on the face of it, all the buildings that were going to fall down in this kind of earthquake have fallen down, right?
I think that's fair enough to say.
Okay.
I think that, and what we're building back obviously in a much more resilient way.
Let's go into the CBD. How did the rebuilding, because there are some infant structures there, right? There are some buildings that are still going up. Did they all withstand it, no worries at all?
Well, I mean, we haven't had reports in from all of the building owners, but certainly going around all of our own centres, whether they're new or whether they're older facilities, we've got all of our council-owned facilities now checked and operating as normal, with one exception, the library and service centre at Linwood, which operates out of Eastgate Mall, and the only reason is because the light fittings are having to be repaired.
Right, okay, so that's all good.
It does feel a much more secure environment than it was when we were confronting the February earthquake.
Right, so it's simply that people who had hardened themselves to the business of living with earthquakes had got used to living without them, I suppose. Is that why the psychological impact is so profound?
I think that's true, but I also think that there are people, and there are people who are even more susceptible to feeling that way. If you haven't settled with your EQC or with their insurer, and you've been fighting about getting some repairs done to your house, and there isn't an agreed scope of works, or your insurer's trying to force you into a payout that you don't want to take because you're not sure if it's a fair deal. You know, if you've got all of those things on your mind, and they've been on your mind for 5 years now, then yesterday was probably a greater blow than it would be to someone in my situation.
Christchurch Mayor Leanne Dalzell, thank you so much for your time this evening, 5:13. We're going to try and look at this in a bit more depth. In the aftermath of the 2011 quake, one of the defining aspects of the response from the people of Christchurch was their determination, collective determination to overcome adversity. Everyone you interviewed, no matter how much they'd lost, would tell you there's someone worse off than me. But resilience perhaps is an act of will. And 4 years after the last truly significant aftershock, perhaps people had gotten out of the habit. Precious things had been put back on the shelves. People had stopped feeling trepidation. And then yesterday, on Bower Ave and Parklands or New Brighton, sinkholes opened up, liquefaction recurred, and a widespread sense of recovery has perhaps been set back. I spoke to a resident of the street, Alice Mardell, who was out on the road trying to take stock.
I'm okay. I'm probably a little shaky. I'm realising that the safety I thought I had doesn't really exist. Shaky.
So 5 years on, you'd begun to feel like the earthquakes were a thing of the past, and then suddenly, yesterday,
absolutely,
bang.
Yes. It feels odd that they call it an aftershake, because that was sort of like an earthquake rather than aftershock. Bang, yeah. Yes, it was like life stopped yesterday. And you have to start again. We're tired of new normals, I think. It's actually really hard to explain, but yesterday everything changed. Like, I had my son here, and he suffered terribly because he was in the city at the time of the February earthquake when all the buildings fell onto the buses. He was there, and he's never really recovered. And yesterday, he went into major fright, I think. I don't know. Ask me a question because my mind is empty.
No, I understand that. And your mind is empty because you're exhausted, I suspect. You're quite close to the coast there, right? So this is low-lying land. And I can see the street behind you, but for our listeners rather than our viewers, can you describe what happened in terms of the liquefaction and what the ground did?
Well, I was inside. So my first experience was everything crashed and fell. My whole house the floor was covered in stuff that I thought would never happen again. And a lot of things broke, very important things to me broke. But I came outside to see how the neighbours were doing, and actually nobody came outside, which was really interesting. But because I didn't live here in the first earthquake, I lived further down. I came outside and the liquefaction, that really, really scared me because I didn't think I would ever see that again. It wasn't bad, and to be fair, the trucks came, the little diggers came and filled in the holes and scraped it all up very quickly, and that was comforting. And even though everything shook absolutely wildly, the house isn't damaged any further, because I bought a damaged house, so it's not insurable. And the panic that went through me at that time, because I thought all the earthquakes were over, and so the panic I experienced at that time was like, where will I live? What will I do? But the house didn't get any further damaged, and that was absolutely amazing.
Can you take me back 5 years? You said you lived somewhere else. Did you suffer from earthquake damage at the time? Were you forced to move after the February 2011 quake?
No, I was sort of an in-between person. In the September quake, I got hurt. Damaged my shoulder. In the February quake, I was at home on my own, and I actually lived down Bower Ave, still on Bower Ave, but further down. No, the house was fixed, it was quite damaged, and everything was broken. But no, everything got fixed, and very satisfactorily, I must say. I didn't have an awful lot of the bothers that other people had about bad jobs and things. I was very grateful for that. A lot of my people were damaged emotionally, and that keeps me busy even today, looking after people.
Alice, you look after people, but as I talk to you, I suspect you need a little bit of looking after. This has taken its toll on you, hasn't it?
That's awesome. I'm probably a little bit more shaky because I'm on camera, and be fair. I generally cope with everything. Yesterday, I recognised I did not cope because it was just so completely unexpected. Utterly. We've moved on and got on with our lives and set out our precious things, and you have to wonder whether you should actually put everything back in boxes. I don't think we can ever get back to being safe here again.
Alice Mardell of Bower Ave. In terms of the city's physical recovery, the most obvious setback has happened where the hills have collapsed so spectacularly yesterday, as you will have seen, or have simply been destabilised again. The Port Hills remain the site of a slow and precarious series of demolitions dating back to 2011. Had yesterday not been a Sunday, crews may well have been working exactly where the rocks fell. I asked Brendan Winder, Group Manager of Land Information New Zealand, about the work they're still doing there in the wake of 2011.
Yeah, in the Port Hills, John, 712 houses were red zoned and 498 are now owned by the Crown. Of that 498, 208 have been cleared. That's our current statistics.
OK, so you're going to have to stop that work now, are you?
Yeah, we have. We've paused it for a couple of days just while we take a look at the damage and do our assessments and just make sure that our sites are safe enough for the contractors to get back on there and resume their work.
Are things still falling off? Are rocks and rubble and debris still falling down?
A little bit. There have been some aftershocks over the course of the last 24 hours or so. It's not hugely active, but there was a fair bit of material that came down during the quake and afterwards, so it'll take us a wee while to figure out exactly what to do next.
There was a lot of material came down, and in that context, it's pretty extraordinary no one was injured, I guess.
Yeah, and the timing of the quake was really fortunate in many regards. The Sunday afternoon, when our contractors aren't on site, was the best time by far for this to happen. If it had happened today at this time, we may well have a much different scenario.
How much rock do you think came down? Are you able to estimate yet?
My geotechnical engineers are pulling that information together for us currently. The cumulative total will be in the order of thousands of tonnes. It's spread across a number of different sites, so it really is specific to each individual property.
And Brendan, in terms of the homes you've already red zoned, will that number have to get bigger now as the cliff subsides?
No, that won't change, John. The red zone offer has expired. We'll just go through the current scope that we have. There's still a number of properties that may come across to us with current offers, but I don't expect any new offers will be made.
Okay, so you're just going to assess how stationary that land is and go back to work when it's appropriate?
That's exactly right, yeah. There's quite a bit of work to be done to figure that out. Lots of the sites will have to go back almost to first principles to figure out if it's safe enough to operate on there. Our engineers are intimately involved in that process right now. Once they've done that, they'll talk to our project managers and the contractors, and then a decision amongst the three of them will be agreed before they get back out there.
That's Brendan Winder, Group Manager, Land Information New Zealand. We're going to leave Christchurch for the time being. We will be back in the city looking at the effects, the consequences of the earthquake after 6 o'clock. But now Taranaki farmer David Roigard has been sentenced to life in prison with a minimum non-parole period of 19 years for the murder of his son. A jury found Roigard killed his son Aaron in June 2014 after stealing more than $66,000 from him. The 27-year-old farmhand's body has never been found. Reporter Andrew McRae was at the High Court in New Plymouth for the sentencing. I asked him what the sentencing judge said.
Justice Heath really got stuck into Roigard. He described him as evil. He said he was not unintelligent, but certainly cunning and calculating. We also heard from the judge that Roigard has a antisocial and narcissistic personality disorder, and it means that he is very controlling of people, particularly family members. And the judge also went on to say that with no mitigating circumstances in his favour today, said there's no remorse shown, and of course no body, and that is basically he described it as a really, evil part of the whole thing. No body, so that his family, particularly his wife and his two young children, can basically give him a decent farewell.
Andrew, during your journalism career, I suspect you've sat in a great many sentencing. I've read the judge's sentencing remarks. I can't recall many cases where the judge has been more concerted, more singular and more critical than this. Did it strike you that he was really getting stuck in?
Well, it did really, John. Justice Heath had sat through the 5 weeks of the trial. There's one point that he did contradict the Crown over, and that was he disagreed with the Crown that the Crown's basically their idea was that Roigard had been premeditated in his killing of his son Aaron. But Justice Heath went on to say he didn't think it was Roigard's primary intention to kill his son on that day in 2014, but it was basically, the judge thought it was Roigard's plan B. And when the son came along to talk to his father about the missing money that he was going to buy the farm with, the son then got really angry, and the judge believes that the father tried to talk him out of it. When he didn't, that's when he hit him and killed him with a wood splitter, and in the next couple of hours after that, somehow managed to hide his body, and it's still missing.
Yeah. Victim impact statement today from Aaron's partner.
That's right, that's Julie Thomas, and she's the mother of Aaron's 2 little boys. One was just born following his death, and the other one is about, I think, 5 or 6. And she really let Roigard have it too. She asked him how he could kill his son. She said she'd never forget and certainly never forgive him. And she said she had pure hatred towards her father-in-law. She also pointed the finger at Roigard's wife and sister, saying that they should be ashamed of themselves. And the judge made a point that he also thought that the wife and the daughter were certainly under Roigard's control as well. And Julie Thomas went on to say that David Roigard made her physically sick. She described him as a pathetic liar, a thief and a murderer, and someone who'd abused Aaron's trust, and she would never, ever, ever forgive him.
The family, of course, Julie and their 2 children, will be desperately hoping for a body, and I guess after sentencing, the police are still hoping that Roigard may tell them where he put his son?
Absolutely, and we heard from the police afterwards that they actually approached Roigard in prison last week. One of the officers went to see him to see whether he would then spill the beans where the body was, but he refused to talk. Even that's a week ago. The police Detective Senior Sergeant Blair Burnett, he said that it didn't matter whether Roigard got 10 or 19 years non-parole. The real problem was not having the body to return to the family to give it a decent burial and a send-off. And he said it's really frustrating, the police, that they haven't been able to return the body to Julie and her 2 sons, because basically right at the beginning of the case he had promised her that he would. And he's still holding to that promise, but he does say that as every day goes by, it just gets harder and harder. But they are remaining positive. The police will regroup in the next few days, go over what they've covered so far, just in case they've missed something. But as they said, they will not rest until they find Aaron and they can return him to his family and friends.
It's Andrew McRae from outside the court in New Plymouth. 27.5 minutes past 5 on Checkpoint. Coming up in the next half hour, parents fear for their children's safety in Palmerston North as the man who abducted a 5-year-old girl remains at large, and an open letter from former New Zealand soldier Ko Hapu, held without charge in a Perth jail, to the Australian politician responsible for him being there. We would love to hear from you in any way you choose. Feedback is really welcome. Text 2101, email checkpoint@radionz.co.nz, or Checkpoint RNZ is our Facebook and Twitter addresses. Outsourcing giant Serco is fighting for changes to be made to a corrections department report after it investigated claims of fight clubs at Mount Eden Prison. You'll remember this from last year, of course. Control of the prison was taken off Serco in July after reports of violent attacks on prisoners, and video footage of prison fights was posted online. We can't tell you what the corrections investigation found, but we can say that the private operator thinks it was unfair and relied on anonymous evidence from prisoners that hasn't been corroborated. Our reporter Max Toll has been in the High Court in Wellington today and joins us now. Welcome, Max. Why is Serco unhappy?
Well, I'm sure, as you recall, some quite horrific videos of prisoners fighting were loaded onto YouTube last year. I think one of them has about 2 million views to date. Not a good look for the corrections, and certainly not a good look for Serco. Corrections took over the running of Mount Eden Prison, and now its investigation into those supposed fight clubs has wrapped up. It's written a report which is ready and waiting, but Serco doesn't like what's in it and wants it changed. It says that the report makes conclusions based on anonymous evidence from prisoners who haven't been named, which haven't been corroborated. It also wants to be given the notes from those interviews so it can have a proper chance to defend itself. In court, it was revealed that corrections' reasoning for not giving Serco those notes, not letting them know what the anonymous prisoners told them, was that, look, maybe he'll come back to the prison and these guys will be labelled narcs or snitches. Serco's reasoning is that if you tell us who these guys are, which unit they're in, then we can really narrow down the problem. Serco also said that the investigation shouldn't have been carried out by the Chief Inspector in the first place, and that he's someone who's employed by the Department of Corrections, and he's really not independent. Look, it doesn't like how the report was put together, it doesn't like what's in it, and what's been left out as well.
Nonetheless, Corrections is standing by it?
It is indeed, yeah. It says that the inspector, it's his prerogative to include whatever evidence he wants in the report, whatever evidence he feels appropriate, and to draw his own conclusions. In some cases, Corrections says it didn't need to give Serco certain information, and in others, Serco asked for that information too late. It says the inspector was the right person to investigate, as the problems at Mount Eden Prison were about safe practice more than just fight clubs, and that,
When might we know what's in this report? I mean, the interesting thing about this discussion is it's all taking place without the report itself. And there's a he says, a she says, but a real difficulty in actually anyone making any kind of independent assessment. When, if ever, will we see the report?
Well, it is suppressed, but one thing the Corrections lawyer, Solicitor General Mike Heron, said in court today, that when the report is released, if it is indeed released, no one's going to come out of it with a glowing report card. No. Not Serco, not Corrections. And look, whether it is released or when it's released really depends on tomorrow's decision. If Justice Clark says Serco wasn't given a fair chance to defend itself, then it'll be back to the drawing board and the report will need to be rewritten. If Corrections successfully defends itself, it could be really quite quickly that the report's released. But I think the vibe in court was that it's just a matter of when, not if, a report is released. And one thing I should add is that it was revealed in court that out of all the prisoners who were interviewed, 48, not one could confirm that they'd ever seen a prisoner thrown over a balcony. Now, that was one of the most serious allegations made last year, an act called dropping.
Thanks, Max Toll. Max Toll, our employment reporter who was in the High Court in Wellington today. It's 29 minutes to 6, time for the news headlines with Katrina Batten.
The police in Taranaki say their focus remains on finding the body of Aaron Roigard, who was murdered by his father in 2014. David Roigard, who's 51, was today sentenced in the High Court in New Plymouth to life with a non-parole period of 19 years. He killed his 27-year-old son with a wood splitter, but the body has never been found. The Prime Minister John Campbell says it's too early to say whether New Zealand will increase its annual quota of refugees. Community and church leaders and former refugees spoke today at Parliament in support of increasing the quota of 750. Mr Campbell says the government's 3-yearly review of the United Nations quota will, in the next few months, consider whether to raise the number of refugees. The Corrections Department is standing by its investigation into claims of organised fighting at Auckland's Mount Eden prison. The prison's operator Serco wants the Chief Inspector's final report changed, as it says it's unfair, inaccurate and relies on uncorroborated evidence from anonymous prisoners. Land Information New Zealand says while thousands of tonnes of rocks came down in the Port Hills area during yesterday's earthquake in Christchurch, more homes are not likely to be red zoned. 712 homes have been red zoned in the Port Hills area, and 498 of them are now owned by the Crown. And more than $1 billion worth of illicit methamphetamine has been seized from a shipment of bras and inside storage units filled with art supplies in Australia. Authorities in Sydney say it's the largest seizure of liquid methamphetamine in Australia's history. The public campaign to buy a beachfront property in the Abel Tasman National Park reached more than 39,000 pledges as it passed its 3 o'clock deadline today. I'll have more news, sport and weather at 6.
Thanks, Katrina. We look forward to it. Let's turn to business news now with Nona Peltier, who is sitting beside me in the Auckland studio. Welcome back, Nona. We're in takeover mode today. People were saying, show me the money, and by golly, someone did.
Yeah, absolutely. We had quite a surprising morning. First of all, right off the hop, we had the offer from Newplex put out a notice that they'd receive a proposal for a takeover that values the company at $1 billion.
Newplex shareholders would have been clicking their heels.
Yeah, those are their, I think, well, who knows? I mean, it's going to take some 6 weeks before they come up with a proposal that they can put together and present before the court, and then it would be a binding agreement. And then the shareholders will have a chance to vote on that, and that might take 3 months before they ever actually get to see all those pieces.
In terms of market capitalisation, though, this was a fairly generous offer, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean it really was.
Yeah, it
was 44% above. That's the premium to the closing price on Friday.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
44, and then, not like we had barely, we're still typing up that story. Next one, we got Diligent. They announced their takeover. Now, that's a far more complete deal that shareholders will have to consider. And again, that values that company pretty much at $940 million. That's including cash. They got a lot of cash on their books.
Tell people what Diligent does, because boy, they've been a success story, but a reasonably below the radar one outside business communities.
Well, they're basically they're based in in the United States, and they provide software to organize your books, and that's really for boards. So it's kind of like sort of an odd kind of, not very mainstream.
They won't be considering odd, given that they've just been offered $1 billion for it.
That's a lot of odd.
Yeah,
isn't
that's
it?
nice odd, isn't it?
It sure is. And that deal will be going to shareholders before we expect to see the Newplex one. And of course, naturally, the share prices of these particular companies. Now, of course, the Diligent offer was a 31% premium to Friday's close. So we're seeing, some pretty strong prices coming through them, and that's really shown through our markets all through, not just today, but through Asia, we're seeing quite strong rebounds in prices that followed through Europe. So after we went home on Friday, the European banks, there was a rebound, there was
Look, no one is convinced by this. These people are just making it up as they go along.
I tell you what.
They rebound Monday, they'll fall Wednesday, they'll rebound Friday. I've never seen anything like it.
It was the absence of bad news, if you must know.
Okay,
there was simply no bad news.
Pollyanna
and there
markets.
You go. So it followed through Europe, then the United States, into New Zealand. Australia's looking good, all the Asia markets. Can you believe the Nikkei is up 6% when I last looked?
Yeah, and last week, what did it do? Down 10% during the course of the week?
Yeah, more than that. And of course, China's doing well. It opened up and it's improved through the day. So
just very quickly before you go, Contact Energy, what did they do?
Let's not forget about Contact Energy, the first of one of our large companies to report this week. We're expecting 16 companies this week. Contact Energy, they posted a loss. But the market was unhappy with that. Because
they knew it was coming, right?
Yeah, they did. And also they found a buyer for their Otahuhu station. $30 million they're getting for that from an Auckland property developer. Don't ask me. I don't know. But the shares ended up actually overall, we've got the index ended up 1.7%. A rise of 100 points for a nice round number, $6,034. Trading at 66.5 US cents and 93 Australian.
Nona Peltier, thanks so much. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Nona Peltier, our senior business reporter here in Auckland with us for the week. The former New Zealand soldier held without any charge in a maximum security prison in Perth has written an angry open letter to Australia's Immigration Minister, Peter Dutton. Ko Hapu has now spent 3 months in Western Australia's toughest prison, Casuarina, despite having no criminal convictions, having committed no crime, having been charged with nothing. He's been held there under Australia's tough new immigration laws for belonging to an outlawed motorcycle gang. Now, we can't interview Ko Hapu in prison, but his partner tells us that he's struggling to cope with his incarceration, with what he describes as deliberate provocation by some prison staff, with what he says is a deliberate campaign of harassment against his partner in her daily life outside, and with the uncertainty of his own future. How long will he be in prison for? Because he can't give interviews, Ko Hapu has emailed an open letter through his partner to us here at Checkpoint. The letter is written for Peter Dutton. This is that letter, verbatim, not altered in any way, read aloud by Radio New Zealand's Jason Takari.
I am furious. The WA Police Force are now back to harassing my family while I'm locked up. They're just trying their hardest to find something to pin on me. Something they will never find is there's nothing to find. Last time this harassment happened, pulling over my partner numerous times for licence checks, then never actually checking her licence, following her to work, sitting outside of my home. The extreme stress on us resulted in us losing our unborn child. Now you want me to hurt all over again. We lost our baby and have to start all over again because Peter Dutton wants to put us through this emotional roller coaster by keeping me away from my family. Has the Minister Peter Dutton gone this low to do this? I have a right to live like anyone else in this world, freely. I am human and deserve human rights no matter what I wear on my back. I have a partner and children who need me more than ever. Getting back to fly in, fly out work to support my family is my main priority. My children need my help financially, and you greedy man will not allow it. You are more worried about the patch on my back than the uniform I put on to support my family. Believe it or not, I am all about my family. I love them, and I want this all to be over. Let me go home to them. Enough is enough. My family has been through so much, as have I. The emotional pressure you have put upon us is something a childish, weak man like you will never understand. You have tried and tried to rip us apart, but that won't happen. Is it fair to take me away from our little girl? Please explain to me how that is fair. Is it fair for an innocent child to suffer the hurt and feel the burden we do? A burden that was made worse by the loss of our baby. Now you're doing it all over again by trying to keep us apart. They are doing their best in here and outside to get me to lose the discipline I have by the ill treatment I endure in this maximum security prison as an immigration detainee. But the encouraging words and support I received from a former superior officer from the military have helped. From one red diamond to another red diamond, do not lose discipline. I am trying, but at times it is hard. But I will continue to do so and exercise the strength of my brain to overcome this situation. I thank everyone that has supported me so far from high above and around the world. Thank you. Ko.
That was an open letter written by Ko Hapu to Australia's Immigration Minister Peter Dutton, emailed to us by Ko Hapu's partner in Perth and read aloud for Checkpoint by RNZ's Jason Tekari. Mr Dutton's office says he is currently travelling overseas and is unable to comment at this time. We do find it very difficult to get interviews with Mr Dutton. We will keep attempting to do so in response to Ko Hapu's continued detention. 3 months, no charges, no criminal conviction, still in Casuarina prison. Parents in Palmerston North were on high alert, with some changing their morning routines today to ensure their children got to school absolutely safely. A 5-year-old girl was taken for 2.5 hours on Friday morning when she was walking to school with her 2 sisters. Police are still searching for the man who took the girl and for the car he was driving. Now this morning our reporter Kate Gudsell spoke to worried parents outside Te Kura o Takaro school as they were dropping their children off.
I'm really, really worried. That's why I'm walking to school now and dropping her off. Is this from the other day when her friend got, that's one of my youngest girl's best friends, the one that was taken. So yeah, we're pretty scared and we live just around Shamrock Place. So yeah, definitely watching out for the kids. I think we all are today. I notice all our parents are here, so yeah.
So you wouldn't normally walk your kids to school?
No, I wouldn't normally, but I am now. Definitely hard out.
I drop them off every day. And I mean, how do you feel about this situation at the moment?
A little nerve-wracking because 90% of my family go to this school. So last week's event was really shocking. But I watch my baby walk in. I don't leave until I see him walk into that classroom. And I'm back here before he walks out.
I walk my children to school every day.
So this hasn't changed your routine?
No, not at all. No, I don't think it will. But it should change the routine of other parents who unfortunately don't walk their kids to school. I mean, it should be a wake-up call to them, actually.
And how do you feel about this situation?
It's quite disturbing. It's quite disheartening, and I mean, shocking to the community.
Well, a short time ago, the Manawatu Area Police Commander, Inspector Sarah Stewart, spoke to our reporter Laura Bootham. She says they are obviously continuing their inquiries.
We have received a lot of information and our staff are working through this and we'll be following up on that. We'll also be making ourselves available around schools, and we've been doing lots of patrols before and after school at different locations, and we are available to have conversations with parents, to offer advice and reassurance as well. We urge any parent who has any concerns to speak with one of our officers, and we'll be around in the coming days.
Now, parents have actually spoken to RNZ News and voiced their concern and said that they are now walking their children to school where previously they hadn't. Is that something that you would advise them to do until this person is apprehended?
I think it's really important that parents do what is going to make them and their children feel confident and able to carry on with their normal activities as they would. Of course, we've been recommending to people that the best thing to do is to encourage and have discussions with their children about recognising undesired behaviours, but also making sure that they look at different ways that they can support their children. And that does include walking with friends or walking with older brothers and sisters or with adults.
Given that the little girl, the 5-year-old, was walking with her older sisters, do you think it's preferable that parents or another adult walk with their children, given that unfortunately having older children wasn't a deterrent in this instance and the person is still out there?
Well, I guess we have to think about other children who are older and suitable to walk with children, and a lot of young children together might not be the best option, but some older teenagers might be fine as well as an adult or instead of an adult. But parents just have to make an assessment on their own situation, where their children are, and what gives them and their children the most reassurance and confidence.
And Sarah, just in relation to the car, have you had any updates on that and from the public, given that you've put out some new information over the last 12 hours?
We have had some information from various people relating to this inquiry, but there's nothing specific that I can comment on at this stage other than we're very interested in any sightings or any information about the whiteness and maxima in those two locations of Shamrock Street and Hinds Place.
Do you feel like you're getting closer to identifying this individual?
We are working through a process of investigations. As you can imagine, there's an awful lot to do and there's a lot to follow up. So we're working through it. We have a great team working. They're doing an amazing job and doing everything they possibly can at the moment.
So you have a great team, but just what I'm asking is whether you've actually have made some excellent progress, good progress in relation to identifying this individual.
What I can tell you is that we're doing absolutely everything we can, and the inquiry is moving forward.
Commander Inspector Sarah Stewart speaking to our reporter Laura Bootham. Just coming up to 13 minutes to 6 on Checkpoint. The father of an Auckland man whose suspicious death 7 years ago is still puzzling detectives, is appealing for someone who knows what happened to come forward. A coroner's inquest has been held today for Damien Loader Allen, who was found dead in his Hillsborough house on September the 24th, 2009. The police still don't know the 33-year-old's movements in the house before he was found dead in his bed, and they say they've interviewed some witnesses up to 4 times now. His father, Mark Allen, lives in Thailand and he hasn't been back to New Zealand since the funeral. Our reporter Carla Penman was at the inquest and she spoke to Mr. Allen afterwards.
Naturally, as parents, we're devastated because you never expect to bury your kids, and the trauma goes on forever and ever. You've got birthdays and Christmases and Father's Day that never have the meaning they did before. And I just really want to appeal to anyone that knows these people. If there's a conscience, they can come forward and help the police with their investigation so we can put a closure to this.
And obviously today, the police said that they've extensively investigated. The coroner said today doesn't think the police have left any stone unturned. What more can the police do in that case, do you think?
I think the police's hands are tied for sure, because the law dictates, and I don't agree with the law. The law dictates what they can do and they can't do, and to me their hands are tied a lot. That they are trying, obviously, but they can only try so far if they don't get some help from outside to bring these people to justice. They need the help. They need the help to do it. They need someone to speak up.
And do you still have hope that someone will?
I do have hopes that they will, but dogs are dogs. And dogs are dogs, and dogs don't go to the police. Yeah.
Obviously there's been theories floating around, like what could possibly have happened.
This is the thing, and no one knows, and these people, I mean, the only ones that know are the ones in that house, and they're not talking for whatever reason. They've obviously got no conscience, and until they talk, no one will know. It's only hearsay.
That's the dead man's father, Mark Allen, talking to Carla Penman. 10 and a half minutes to 6. Let's change the subject entirely. The Black Caps have been well and truly beaten in their first test against Australia. Yes, sport now, with the visitors winning by an innings and 52 runs. The visitors dismissed New Zealand for the second time at Wellington's Basin Reserve with a day and a half still to play, ending Brendan McCullum's hopes of a Test series win against Australia during his career. The second and final test, which doubles as McCullum's last match for New Zealand, will begin in Christchurch on Saturday. I asked sports editor Stephen Hewson to go searching for some positives from the match.
So a couple of positives, if you are looking for a couple. Henry Nichols in the second innings, he was on debut and scored 59. I mean, that was a big ask for a young chap like him, to come in and try and rescue the test match, because that's what he had to do, basically bat today and, well, hopefully all of tomorrow, but obviously that hasn't happened. And that would possibly be about it. I suppose Mark Craig again showed why he's useful as a batsman at the tail end of the order. But, yeah, apart from that, disappointing.
Yeah,
disappointing.
Really disappointing in the context of Brendan McCullum's 100th, and also that we're coming to the end of his career. So, you know, everyone had hoped for so much better. Craig's interesting, isn't he? 40-something in the first innings, 30-something in the second innings, not out both times. Should he be higher up? Should he be a place or two further up the order, Stephen?
He could be a place or two further up the order. Unfortunately, he also dropped a catch when Steve Smith was batting, the Australian captain. I mean, when we say disappointing, we look at that batting performance on the first innings, and pretty much the match was over come the end of day one, really, because 183, both captains and the Australian coach, Darren Lehmann, conceded it certainly wasn't enough, despite the conditions suiting the seam bowlers. Brendan McCullum made no bones about that despite the balls moving around, they needed better. 250, 300 might have been a little bit more positive. And then, of course, that bit of luck. They always seem to need the Black Caps because they're a side of battlers, that they're not quite the class of Australia. And Voges and the no ball when he was on 7 would have possibly changed things. But then sides, if you're a good enough side, you know, you can turn those things around. There's always going to be something that goes against you. It's a case of making your own luck.
So, we have to make some luck pretty fast before the second test. Do you think the Black Caps have what it takes to challenge Australia in the test arena?
If everything goes for them, yes, they have the skills and the quality. They need things for Australia to possibly have the odd bit of bad luck, and for themselves to have a bit of good luck. They need Kane Williamson to fire. I mean, he's not playing as well as what he was a year ago. We're still so reliant on him to be the backbone of an innings, and Brendan McCullum needs to score runs, not only because he's going into his last test in Christchurch, but simply for the good of the team. Remember, there was no Ross Taylor there. He could possibly be back for the second test in Christchurch. That would make a big difference, but we rely still on a couple of players seeing the team to good totals, and the rest of the team batting around them and giving them support.
Stephen Hewson, looking for the positives from an innings and 52 run, less than 3-day defeat to Australia. One of the positives was the magnificent weather in Wellington, glorious for 3 days. It is 7 minutes to 6 on Checkpoint. A man who fled Eritrea and then faced deportation after being accused of spying in Sudan has spoken out about the day that changed his life, when New Zealand accepted him as a refugee. Ibrahim Omer spoke at a public hearing at Parliament today, where there are calls to double the refugee quota from the current level of 750 a year. Community and church leaders, members of refugee communities and campaign groups were among the speakers at the hearing, which was sponsored by United Future leader Peter Dunn. Ibrahim Omer says refugees have a lot to offer, and they're putting their lives on the line to flee the slow and painful death they face at home. Ibrahim joins us now from our Wellington studio. Welcome, Ibrahim. Tell me about that day in 2008 when you were accepted as part of New Zealand's refugee quota to come here.
Kia ora, John. Thank you so much for having me. The day that I got accepted by New Zealand immigration, that was very remarkable day for me. That's the day that my life had changed for good. Few months before that day, I was facing deportation to Eritrea at any moment, and the UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, has worked so hard to make the Sudanese authorities change their minds. But they said that he can't stay in our country. It's our national security, and it's for the best interest of our country and our society. He needs to leave the country. So obviously my only option was to go back to Eritrea, where I could be prosecuted, where I could be thrown in the metal containers or underground in the desert somewhere in the eastern part of Eritrea. So luckily my UNHCR referred my case to New Zealand, and New Zealand accepted me. And the interview only took around 40 minutes, and yeah, I got accepted, and I couldn't be happier.
How is your life in New Zealand, Ibrahim?
My life in New Zealand at the moment, well, I'm pretty much Kiwi. I'm integrated in the society. I'm studying. I'm doing my surgery, political science and international relations, as well as development studies at Victoria University. But at the beginning, it was a bit struggle. Obviously, it's 3 days of flighting away from home, from Africa, from East Africa particularly, and even though there were some supports around, like to help the refugees, people like myself to settle down, to integrate into the hosting society, but it wasn't enough. It was a struggle, but at the end of the day, it takes a personal determination, personal will to get by, to get yourself integrated and to become successful. So it was a struggle, but at the end of the day, I'm here today speaking to you as a Kiwi, doing well, trying to give back to the country that gave me a lot, the country that saved my life 7 years ago. And yeah, that's what my life looks like now.
Ibrahim, New Zealand takes a small number of refugees, and no one is denying that. One of the arguments in favour of a small number of refugees is that we are able, through the Mangere Refugee Resettlement Centre, to get people into New Zealand society in a way that means they feel they have some connection to the place and belong here. Now, you seem to say that actually when you arrived it was tough at first. If we take more, if we double the quota, as many people are campaigning to have done, will we be able to manage people satisfactorily into their new lives?
Yes, through putting enough resources, enough human power, and through proper investment from the government, from the NGOs, yes, we can do that. The 750 that we're taking now, obviously after 2008, at least after I came back, after I arrived to New Zealand, there were funding cut from so many organizations such as the Changemakers Refugee Forum, who were providing refugees with so many support. So with the government allocating enough funding in this area, and a lot of things can be done. And if you remember last year, during the refugee crisis, so many organizations such as the Red Cross, they said that yes, we can take care of 1,500 if the government ever accepted or decided to increase the refugee quota. So my answer is, with the proper funding, with the proper resources, with the proper human power, yes, it's possible.
Ibrahim Omar, former refugee and now Kiwi, thank you so much for joining us, Ibrahim, from our Wellington studio. Hundreds of thousands of people in one of Mexico's poorest and most dangerous cities have gathered to greet Pope Francis and celebrate an outdoor mass. Here's Diane Hodges from Reuters.
A sea of Roman Catholic faithful greet the Pope as he arrives in the city of Ecatepec on Sunday as part of his 5-day tour of Mexico. Local officials expected up to 2 million people to turn out to greet the pontiff and hear him celebrate Mass in one of Mexico's poorest and most dangerous cities. Standing in front of an image of the Virgin of Guadalupe, Pope Francis took a swipe at the country's rich and corrupt elite.
Some will try to separate us, creating a divided and warring family, a society of the few for the few. First wealth, taking from us goods which were given to us all, and using them only for myself or my people. This is the bread that comes from someone else's sweat.
Ecatepec is notorious for its gang violence that has driven the city's murder rate to one of Mexico's highest. It's also the site of the unsolved murders of scores of women, some of whose bodies were found in a canal not far from where Francis spoke on Sunday, as he celebrated the rituals designed to bring hope and peace to the Church's faithful.
The report from Reuters. After 6, we're going back to Christchurch. We went there about 45 minutes ago. Alice talked to us, and she's provoked lots of feedback. Alice, across the other side of Christchurch, listening to you with the tears rolling, I fear from you. Lots of people wishing you well and saying, Alice, you were a reminder of the impact on people close to the epicentre of yesterday's earthquake. Kia ora everyone, you are listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell on RNZ National. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Coming up in the next half hour, liquefaction brings back memories for Christchurch residents, memories they could have done without. Why iwi leaders think the government should help secure Awaroa Beach for Māori, and the assistance dog. This is a beautiful story that's changed a Palmerston family's life. All of that and more coming up in the next 29 and a half minutes. But first, here's the news with Katrina Batten.
Ngā mihi nui, good evening. The police in Taranaki say their focus remains on finding the body of Aaron Roigard, who was murdered by his father in 2014. David Roigard, who's 51, was today sentenced in the High Court in New Plymouth to life with a non-parole period of 19 years. He killed his 27-year-old son with a wood splitter, but his body has never been found. Detective Senior Sergeant Blair Burnett says frustration levels remain high because police haven't been able to return Aaron Roigard to his partner Julie.
19 years non-parole, whether it was 10 or whether it was 20, it doesn't help us bring Aaron home. And when you hear Julie talking about the dignity and respect he deserves, that remains the focus at the moment, to try and find Aaron and bring him home.
Detective Senior Sergeant Burnett says police approached Roigard again last week, but he declined to talk to them about the body. A former New Zealand soldier detained without charge in a Perth jail has written an angry open letter to the Australian Immigration Minister. Ko Hapu has spent 3 months in Casuarina prison under Australia's tough new immigration laws for belonging to an outlawed motorcycle gang. In a letter sent to Checkpoint, Mr Hapu accuses the Minister, Peter Dutton, of a deliberate campaign of harassment against him and his partner. He says the police have been following his partner to work, sitting outside her home and pulling her over multiple times to check her licence. Mr Hapu, who's not been charged with a crime, says the police are trying their hardest to find something to pin on him. The Prime Minister John Campbell says it's too early to say whether New Zealand may increase its annual quota of refugees. Community and church leaders and former refugees spoke today at Parliament in support of increasing the 750 annual quota. Mr Campbell says the government needs to consider the capacity for resettling more refugees before coming to a decision.
We have been investing quite strongly in our services in places like Mangere, so we've got better capability there. We do like to keep a buffer for emergency commitments, as we made with the Syrian refugees late last year, but it's just a little too early for me to tell.
John Campbell says the 3-yearly review of the United Nations quota will in the next few months weigh up the pros and cons of raising the number of refugees. A Christchurch couple on one of the streets worst affected by silt from liquefaction say they were worried yesterday that they might be back to square one with sorting out their lives. Sunday's 5.7 quake left most parts of the city unscathed, but resulted in more silt and a sinkhole appearing on Bauer Avenue in Parklands. Conan Young has been talking to people on the street.
Alan Bettridge and Josie Hartley were in Littleton when the quake struck and quickly returned home to see if their house, which was only rebuilt 12 months ago, had survived the shaking. Apart from a giant sinkhole in the road outside their home and piles of silt, there was no damage and only the job of picking up a few items off the floor. Mr Bettridge says Bauer Ave was due to be sealed today for the first time since the February 2011 quake, but that will now have to wait a bit longer. In Christchurch, Conan Young.
Land Information says while thousands of tonnes of rock came down in the Port Hills area during yesterday's shake, more homes are not likely to be red zoned. 712 homes were red zoned in the Port Hills area and 498 of them are now owned by the Crown. The group manager of Linz, Brendan Winder, says the red zoned offer has expired and he doesn't expect more homes to be reclassified. He told Checkpoint their priority is to assess the stability of the areas where the collapse occurred.
There's quite a bit of work to be done to figure that out. Lots of the sites will have to go back almost to first principles to figure out if it's safe enough to operate on there. Our engineers are intimately involved in that process right now. Once they've done that, they'll talk to our project managers and the contractors and then a decision amongst the three of them will be agreed before they get back out there.
Land Information New Zealand's Brendan Winder. The Corrections Department is standing by its investigation into claims of organised fighting at Auckland's Mount Eden prison. Control of the prison was taken off Serco in July after claims of violent attacks on prisoners and video footage of prison fight clubs were posted online. Serco says the Chief Inspector's subsequent investigation and final report relies on anonymous claims and allegations that haven't been verified. The report is suppressed. Corrections says it's the Chief Inspector's prerogative to include evidence and draw conclusions he feels are appropriate. Serco also says the investigation failed to confirm allegations that prisoners were thrown over balconies, an act known as dropping. In sport, the old saying, catches win matches, was the key to the Australian cricketers' success over the Black Caps in the first test, according to their captain Steve Smith. The hosts have been thrashed by Australia, losing by an innings and 52 runs at the Basin Reserve in Wellington. Smith says the first day of the test was one of the best experiences he's had on the cricket field.
It was one of those mornings, I guess, where there wasn't too many play and misses and they nicked most of the balls. So it was nice to have one of those mornings, but you still have to take your chances, and I thought the guys caught really well in this test match.
Australian captain Steve Smith. Meanwhile, Ross Taylor and Mitchell Santner will miss the second test against Australia due to injury. The test starts in Christchurch on Saturday. The New Zealand sailor Peter Burling says he and teammate Blair Tuke are stoked to have won another world title, but the Rio Olympics remain the target for them this year. The pair wrapped up their fourth straight 49er world title in Florida this morning with a dominant performance. Burling says while it's great to have won, Rio remains their focus.
We know, a lot of these guys are pushing really hard, and if they have a good event, you've got to put on to beat them. And something that for Blair and myself, we're just trying to keep improving and keep pushing on and keep getting better in all the areas that we can get better in, and it's something that seems to be keeping us in pretty good stead at the moment.
Peter Burling. And the New Zealand runner Nick Willis has got his Olympic campaign off to a good start. He's won the Boston Indoor Grand Prix with a time of 3 minutes 53. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Don Otter, a Kiwi food technologist now in Wisconsin, USA, the Taranaki of the States. Except it's flat. And despite having hundreds of cheese factories, they've forgotten the art of slicing the stuff. Our astronomer Alan Gilmore has more to say about the 9th planet. And no, it's not Pluto. In fact, we haven't even seen it yet. And Paul Kennedy brings an Australian perspective to the cricket on Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
The Met Service weather through to midnight tomorrow. Northland, Auckland, Waikato, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Taupo and Gisborne. Often cloudy, a few showers, especially in eastern areas. For the remainder of the North Island, mostly fine and warm, but isolated afternoon and evening showers inland. Nelson, Buller and Westland, cloudy periods, isolated showers today, mainly inland, occasional rain tomorrow with heavy falls possible, especially about the ranges. Marlborough and Canterbury, mostly fine and warm, showers about the Marlborough Sounds and Richmond Range tomorrow. Otago, long fine spells with isolated afternoon and evening showers when thunderstorms are possible about Dunedin and Clutha. For Southland, mainly fine tomorrow but isolated afternoon and evening showers. Fiordland, rain heavy at times with possible thunderstorms, and the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. It's just gone 6:08.
Thank you very much indeed, Katrina. We are going to return to Christchurch now, where small aftershocks continue to hit. After yesterday's 5.7 magnitude earthquake, most buildings have escaped unscathed or with only minor damage, including the new building that has taken place in the CBD. We spoke about this with Leanne Dalzell after 5 o'clock. Not so for Parklands residents, though, where liquefaction brought back 5-year-old memories. Conan Young was there.
Okay, look, we're back on Bauer Ave here, where you've been talking to Alice, John. Look, we've also found this sinkhole that's appeared in the road here at Bauer Ave, just to add to people's miseries. I understand they were actually about to seal this road for the first time since the earthquakes today, actually, but that sinkhole is going to put that work back quite a bit. Now, look, we've also managed to track down some folks who have just had their house rebuilt, actually. 12 months ago, they had their house rebuilt after it was destroyed in the earthquakes. I'm going to introduce you here to Alan Beatridge and Josie Hartley. Hi guys, how's it going?
How are you doing?
Hey, look, thanks very much for giving us some time. Look, take us back to yesterday. You guys were over in Littleton. How did you experience the quake yesterday, Alan?
Well, I just thought I'd hit the curb in the car and it gave a huge bounce. But Josie was gone in the restaurant to check for a table, and she came out running to make sure I hadn't fallen over because, only being one leg. But it was pretty terrifying to know we were back into it again, and quite a worry being in Littleton and not knowing what was really happening at home, knowing what had happened in the past.
You guys you've got a couple of grandkids that you look after full time, so Josie, you're a bit worried about them?
Yes, indeed I was, but they made contact because I couldn't, my phone wouldn't work, but they made contact, and I was very proud of the older boy. He went round the neighbours to make sure everybody was safe, and so I was very proud of him. The other boy was down on the beach swimming, and so no, they were all okay.
And that's the most important thing, isn't it? But obviously with this house that you've just had rebuilt, in the last 12 months, you must have had a few nervous moments coming back here.
Yes, very much so, and not knowing what to find, even though we'd been talking to the oldest boy, he said a lot of stuff was knocked over and one thing and another, but we were still dreading the thought of looking at damage. However, the house doesn't appear to have a single crack in it, so it's quite a relief, considering not that long ago you could put your hand through the walls and between the inside and the outside. So we were very, very relieved. But to see the street, they were due to start sealing along the road this morning at 3 o'clock. That was a non-event. The poor old contractors are working so hard, and then they're taking 2 or 3 steps forward and a couple back, and hopefully they'll be back in tomorrow and carry on. But it's been very, very trying, and having all these aftershocks has played very hard on the nerves. And I thought I'd become used to quakes, but still quite frightened of them. And I know it scares Josie a lot, and we worry so much about the boys. But it's the way it goes.
Colin Young in Parklands, almost 5 years on from the second devastating February 2011 quake. Some fully insured homeowners are still waiting to be paid out, and others are dealing with inadequate repairs. This is incredible, isn't it, 5 years on? A protest rally has been organised for this Sunday, February 21st at Cathedral Square at midday. One of the organisers is Seamus O'Crommer, and he joins us now from South Brighton via Skype video. Seamus, welcome to the program with your magnificent curtains behind you there. Who do you think will turn up on Sunday, and why will anyone be coming 5 years on? Are there still people who aren't sorted?
There are tens of thousands of people, John, who still haven't been sorted, and that's the main drive behind this organisation for a protest rally. We hope that everyone in Christchurch will come, because everyone in Christchurch knows someone who is in this situation or has someone who has been through the mill with EQC and insurers. And we want them to come and stand in solidarity with the people who are in the worst situation possible.
Tens of thousands, because EQC, every time we talk to them, say the number is much, much, much smaller.
Well, we've had spin and statistics for the last 5 years, and as you know, many people find the statistics have been manipulated to such a degree it's hard to believe.
Seamus, why are you doing this? Can you tell me about your personal circumstance? Are you one of the people who are still in limbo, still waiting 5 years on?
I am, but I don't really want to personalise it, because I've been appointed media spokesman, perhaps because I have a cute Irish accent. I don't know.
Yeah, but, I'm sure it's working on radio, and I'm sure. So, what did yesterday's quake bring to the surface, other than liquefaction, obviously, in Parklands? But what did it tell us about Christchurch after 5 years?
Probably it told a lot of people that they don't have any prospect of getting things solved anytime soon, because I suppose my immediate thing was this will put us back to the drawing board in terms of land damage, which we are still waiting to have from EQC. EQC may have done a certain amount of statistics on the property damage, but land damage they have repeatedly postponed and refused to address. And the worst land damage in particular, increased liquefaction risk and increased flooding risk, has been ignored and ignored and ignored. And they've recently put off the date until the end of the year, I believe, before they're going to actually talk to those people.
Seamus,
So
five years on.
Delay.
5 years on, what is the thing that you're most worried about?
Social unrest, frankly, because I talk with Europeans about this, and we say that if this happened in France, people would be out making barricades. New Zealanders are very patient, but I can sense a simmering of resentment and frustration building up, and we hope that that will be made loud and clear on Sunday at the rally, because we want to send a very clear signal to our elected representatives that this cannot go on any longer.
Seamus Okroma, who is one of the organisers of the protest rally that's taking place this Sunday at Cathedral Square at midday. It will be interesting to see how many people turn out. 6:15 on Checkpoint. Iwi leaders say Awaroa Beach and the Abel Tasman National Park should be returned to Māori, and the government should make that happen. A public campaign has raised more than $2 million, as we heard rather wonderfully on Friday night, to buy the land. Tenders close tomorrow. Te Manu Korehi's Lee Marama McLaughlin reports.
It's the same allure of the Abel Tasman that's attracted 39,000 pledges to buy a slice of it that had Māori of Ngāti Rārua, Ngāti Tama and Te Atiawa originally settle there. Ancestors, in fact, of the chairman of the Wakatuan Corporation, Paul Morgan.
My own immediate family lived on the other side of the entrance to the Awaroa, where most of the private dwellings are today. Most of that was cultivated land. There's good records of it, and burial grounds in those areas, which are well known, actually known to DOC, and they're certainly known to our communities.
If the campaign's tender is accepted tomorrow, Awaroa Beach will be owned by all New Zealanders. But that doesn't sit well with a trustee of Ngāti Tama Mana Whenua ki te Tauihu Trust, Fred Te Miha.
Maori actual families owned 50-acre blocks, and the land was taken to form a national park. The government, in my belief, should hand it back. Buy it off the private owners, hand it back to the whānau, the families that lost that land originally through confiscation.
The government has not said it wants to buy it, but hasn't ruled out topping up the fund. The chairman of Te Runanga o Ngāti Tuarangatira, Taku Pārai, says tangata whenua have been dismissed despite their ties to the land and beaches.
They mean a significant amount to us as Māori, particularly as whānau. And for it to be now transferred into the public domain, we don't think it's right. I mean, why wouldn't the government put its hand up to help out the local hapu iwi down there to help purchase it back for them?
Late last year, the Wakatuan Corporation pursued Māori property rights in the Supreme Court and is now awaiting a decision. Paul Morgan agrees that Awaroa should be returned to Māori, but he isn't holding his breath.
Most of our people would agree to that, albeit there's quite a lot of these places, as I said, that were taken dubiously, and I put it this way, we haven't been able to re-establish places like that through the Crown settlement, and in my view that's very unsatisfactory.
Barney Thomas, the chairman of the Mana Whenua ki Mōhua Trust, says he's been talking to campaign organisers.
We agree in principle to get this transaction over the line and to make this property available to all New Zealanders and all visitors.
Mr Thomas and the Māori leaders Te Manu Korehi has spoken with agree that the land belongs in New Zealand hands. For Checkpoint, ko Lee Marama McLaughlin tēnei.
Meanwhile, Wellingtonians Kathy and Stephen Franks have been devoted to Awaroa for 30 years. Kathy was there in their holiday home when RNZ reporter Tracy Neal dropped in on Friday.
We came here 30 years ago. We bought this property after the stock market crash, 87, and then I bought some more land behind about 15 years ago.
Tell me why it's special. What is it about it here?
I was just thinking about that. I mean, it's so beautiful. You're just surrounded by unbelievable beauty. The white sand, the estuary, the tides coming in and out, they change every day, so there's always something happening. And there's a lot of different people here, but they are all absolutely devoted to the bay. So people have different ideas, like some like 1080 and some don't, and that sort of thing. But they are, if there's a working bee, you get everybody. You get the local Motueka guys in, yellow day glow vests and their hard hats, and you get the Wellingtonians. They all come and they do what they can for the working bee, and they're just fabulous, and everyone helps each other out. It's a very, very good community. We have sports at New Year, that sort of stuff, that sort of community, and that's been going on ever since we came, so 30 years. New Year's Day, there's a triathlon, there's a boat race, sandcastle competition, those sorts of things. It's the helping each other out, I think. And you also learn a self-sufficiency and resilience that living in a place or holidaying in a place like this teaches you, because you can't just get in a plumber to fix something and that sort of thing. So we've all learnt new skills.
Are you surprised at how this has taken off, this campaign?
Not really. It's such a beautiful piece of land, and we've always thought that it probably should be in public ownership. I mean, quite honestly, at the moment, it's the best of all possible worlds, because very nice owners, but they're never here, and everyone wanders through it. So it's public access at the moment without any fundraising. But I think it's a good one for the public to own, and in some way, whether it's dock or a trust or something. I think it'd be good as a kayak camp, actually. The kayakers don't have anywhere to go here that's sheltered. There's trees through there.
Do you see things at play that are bigger than the piece of land?
Definitely. It's got, I don't know, how many is it, 30,000 people all think they own a little bit of it and have all pledged money, including my children and my husband, actually. My son lives in Brazil and said he'd put in $200. So it's difficult for the owners because they've got the political pressure of all these people who want it in public ownership, and then they've got their financial strife, so they actually need to take the highest bid. I don't know how it's resolved, but I imagine or hope that the owners and the real estate agents and the government are all talking, and it will be resolved in that way. Yeah.
21 and a half minutes past 6. The outgoing president of Kiribati, Note Tong, gave the opening speech in the Eye of the Storm Pacific Climate Change Conference at Victoria University today. Although climate change threatens the entire planet, of course, Kiribati, a nation made up of 33 inhabited islands, is perhaps at most immediate risk of simply ceasing to exist. I asked him how bad the country's position is right now.
What we are facing is some events that are unprecedented in the past. I mean, for one thing, at the beginning of last year with Cyclone Pam, we were hit by a cyclone for the first time. We were never in the cyclone belt, and that should not have happened. The storm surges continue to come. Just a couple of weeks back, we lost 4 people. We just got washed off the jetty, the pier, and again, it was the kind of weather that we've never seen. They were in a vehicle 8 meters above the sea level with 5 meter predicted waves, but they were well over 8 meters. So these things are happening. They're beginning to worry people.
And also there is the less immediately dramatic but equally problematic issues such as fresh water being contaminated, crops being destroyed. This is almost a constant in your life now, isn't it?
Well, that is becoming more frequent, and yes, it's becoming a constant. There are communities who continue to suffer. We're getting a lot of rain at the moment and some rougher weather than we normally have. And so the water problem is a bit, it has eased off a little bit. But the inundation has continued, and of course, once the fresher water ponds have been inundated, there's no way you can get it back. And so that's been, of course, some food crops that are lost. And of course, there is contamination of the waterlands. And it is affecting the health and life of people.
Does the world care? I know the world says it cares, but materially, meaningfully, does the world care?
Well, we continue to look for solutions. I've been looking for that over the years. Following Paris, I hope that the pledges will be delivered on. And but we are getting some positive reactions. We're getting initiatives from the certain countries who are looking at the adaptation strategies that we are considering. And so that is a positive, but I really hope that they will be able to deliver on that. But the trend so far is looking positive. And really the question beyond that is, will we really be able to get the solution delivered in the form that's required and obviously in time.
And Nota Tong, the outgoing president of Kiribati. So Palmerston North family are hoping to pay it forward after realising the impact an assistance dog has had on their lives. Dr. Gretchen Good from Massey University and her husband Dan have 2 adopted Down syndrome children, 7-year-old Leo and 4-year-old Tiffany. Dr. Good was blind herself but can now see after 23 operations. Last year, after 3 years on a waiting list, the family was given a black Labrador assistance dog. They're now trying to raise 20 grand to help another family get a dog to help them. Gretchen joined us from her work at Massey University in Palmerston North via Skype video, and I asked her who was sitting behind her.
That is Kaz, our family's remarkable assistance dog from Assistance Dogs New Zealand.
And what does Kaz do?
Well, Kaz has a big job. She was trained especially for our family, and that includes me and my 2 children, Leo and Tiffany. Tiffany is 4 and Leo is 7, and Kaz and both of our children have Down syndrome. And Kaz has been trained to help us walk with the children. Each child has their own lead for Kaz, and so they walk along happily, much further than they would without Kaz. Kaz is a real motivator for them to walk, and safely, so they don't run off into car parks. Our children don't have they don't respond to the word stop as quickly as your average 4 and 7-year-old might, and they're not very safety aware. So Kaz keeps us all safe when we're out walking together.
Gretchen, you adopted the kids, Leo and Tiffany, right?
Yes.
And you did so.
Very fortunate to have them.
Oh, well, yeah, and I'm sure they feel the same way. And you did so absolutely understanding that that would be a full-on undertaking for you. What difference has Kaz made?
Well, I'm not sure any parent knows the full-on undertaking.
That's true enough.
Become a parent. Kaz came at just the right time. Both the children had outgrown the largest pram we could find, and my husband Dan and I could no longer carry the children, and they do get tired. They have low muscle tone. They get tired. They can just stop and refuse to move, and Kaz is very helpful at motivating them to keep walking when we're out and about. She keeps them company. They have a lot of medical appointments. The kids have a lot of medical issues associated with Down syndrome. Kaz keeps them company in the hospital when they're getting their bloods drawn, when they're at speech therapy. She's a motivation for them. She's just a remarkable dog.
And so you are so grateful for Kaz and for the difference she's made in your life that you have decided to do what?
Well, when you receive a dog from Assistance Dogs New Zealand, it comes along with the obligation, the responsibility to pay it forward. So our family is raising funds to help train the next dog for the next family who have a child with a disability or an adult. Assistance Dogs New Zealand can train dogs for adults and children with special needs. And so we're trying to pay it forward.
And how are you going about doing this, Gretchen?
Well, so far we've put up a Give a Little page with the help of Assistance Dogs New Zealand, and friends and family and strangers have been very generous on our Give a Little page. And we've just tried to make people aware of that. We've been talking to Lions clubs. The kids have gone to Lions clubs meetings with us and demonstrated how the dog works. We've done some fundraising ourselves at birthday parties and things, and some friends have had a bake sale and raised $1,100 worth of brownies. And yeah, we've had a lot of help with the media. With the Give a Little page has attracted some attention, and it's amazing how people who don't even notice or know us are donating $5, $1, $6, $20. People are very generous, and we're really grateful.
And what do Leo and Tiffany think of this? Because all of a sudden they're becoming, for want of a better term, because this is such an awful word, but they're sort of becoming celebrities.
I don't actually know that they know they are celebrities. We take so many photos of them. They see themselves on our computer screen all the time. But people do know us when we're out and about now. And it's really nice that through some of this media coverage, people know what we're all about. They know what the dog is all about, and they know what our children are all about. Sometimes disability can attract negative attention. CAS attracts positive attention, and that's good for our family, it's good for the kids, and we think it's good for everybody to become a little more aware about disabilities and about assistance dogs.
Gretchen Good, what a wonderful woman, ending our program for tonight.
You're listening to RNZ National, where it's 6:30. Welcome to World Watch PM. I'm John Greaves. Tonight, a weekend of heavy fighting in the Syrian capital Damascus and Aleppo. Barack Obama hosts ASEAN leaders in California, and America's politics of law. Those stories and more in World Watch PM. Calls for peace in Syria appear to be falling on deaf ears as the fighting there intensified over the weekend. Turkey's opened a new front against Kurds in the north and insists that the strikes will continue despite international calls for them to stop. Turkey's Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoglu says that his country will retaliate